Hello. It appears to be snowing. Goodness me. Well, there we go. Indoors as well. Welcome to my festive fireside in London. I've got my Santa hat, but I'll be wearing that a little bit later on. If you all continue to appear on the nice list and don't stray onto the naughty list. So, welcome to our final episode of Winning the Writing Game, brought to you by writing.ie. It's the final episode this year, and we will be back in the new year with some exciting new developments. So this week, Winning the Writing Game gets inside Julie Cohen's process. Julie grew up in Maine, studied English at not one but three universities, which seems quite greedy to me, but we'll hear more about that. Brown, Cambridge, and Reading. Her award-winning novels have sold over 1 million copies worldwide, and she's twice been selected for the Richard and Judy Book Club in the UK. She's also helped many writers go on to be published, and we'll be hearing, I'm sure, a lot about that. And if you stay tuned to the end, there'll be a special Christmas present on that front. Judy is a vice president of the Romantic Novelists Association, a founder of the RNA Rainbow chapter, and a patron of literary charity ABC. ABC to read, indeed. She won the 2020 RNA Inclusion Award. So if we move on to her books, I'm sure many of you know her best-selling novel Together, which has now been translated into 11 languages and optioned for TV. And then there was the Two Lives of Louis and Louise, which was longlisted for the Polari Prize. I'm a big fan of Polari, so I hope we'll be hearing more about that. And has been optioned by Enderby Entertainment as a feature film. And then her first historical novel, Spirited, was published in July 2020, so only a few months ago. She lives in Berkshire with her family and a terrier of dubious origin. I don't know the terrier's name. He may even join us in the next hour, but let's see. So I'm going to sit back, monitor your comments, and be back in about 40 minutes. But I'm really looking forward to our festive session with Sam Blake in conversation with Julie. Over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Simon. I need to get rid of the snow now, don't I? Let's bring Julie in. Keep you for a second. Julie,
yeah, the carpet's getting a bit full of snowflakes.
There she is. So we'll go for it for a minute, and then she'll just. When I'm on tech, anything can happen. So I'll just. There we go. Got rid of the snow.
I love the snow.
It was good, wasn't it? No, it was lovely.
No,
I'll see if I can get rid of Simon, not get rid of Simon, but move him off the screen.
Oh, okay, clearly.
Hi, Simon. There we go. Right. Get there in the end. I'm delighted to have you with us today, Julie, because you have such a huge range of books. We met a long time ago now. We were trying to remember, weren't we, when I did something called Writers Web TV. And then we met again in Harrogate, in fact, and I was absolutely mortified because I knew you, but I didn't realise it was you. You probably realised that afterwards.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know you
were very well.
I wasn't expecting you to be in the crime writers' den of iniquity at all. And I was sitting right behind you, and you said hello and everything, and I was like, I can't work it out. Anyway, so I will apologise. We're all good now. Yes. So going right back to the beginning, I know you started writing your first book when you were 11, but you were a teacher, weren't you? And when you started getting into writing seriously, just take us back to then and those first couple of books that you wrote, and then we'll get into your process a little bit.
Okay. So I always, hi Sam, by the way. I always wanted to be a writer, but I never really knew how you went about becoming a professional writer. And I don't know why it never really occurred to me to just finish a book and send it in, but that seemed like a huge insurmountable barrier, I think, when I was, younger. And so instead of being a writer, I decided to become a teacher. And I loved teaching English at secondary school level. But then I think when I hit 30, just about, I decided, right, this is a dream that I've always had. So I'm going to just make it come true. And so, but I wasn't sure where to start. And I wasn't sure, because I've always read, they say, write what you love to read, but I read everything. I mean, I seriously read everything. I just love to read. And so I didn't know what genre I should go for. So I just picked up this is me being so naive, right? I just picked up this manuscript that I had been writing when I was 18, 19 years old. And I thought, well, I'll just finish it. And it was a Mills and Boon romance. And I thought, well, I might as well finish this and send it off. And I'm sure it'll get published because, Mills and Boon, how hard can it be?
I know. A lot of people think that, don't they? Oh, I know.
I was so dumb. I was so dumb. And so I finished it and I had such a good time. And I also read a ton of Mills and Boons, and I realized actually, this is not.
Some of them are very good. They're really excellent.
Really very good,
Yeah.
and well crafted, and they know their audience and what they need so well. They know the tropes, they know this genre inside and out, and I did not. And so I was arrogant enough to think that was okay. So I sent it off.
Naive, not arrogant. Naive.
Naive. I sent it off to Mills and Boon, and I also, at the same time, I joined the Romantic Novelists Association, and the Romantic Novelists Association has a scheme called the New Writer Scheme, that if you're an unpublished novelist, they will read one of your manuscripts as part of your membership. And they'll give you, it's an amazing deal. It's probably the cheapest bit of professional feedback you can get. So I sent that off and sent it to Mills and Boon at the same time. Well, Mills and Boon just rejected it instantly because super bad. And the RNA report I got back from my anonymous reader was, about 5-6 pages long and could only find one good thing.
Oh dear. We've all been there. You've got to start somewhere.
You have a good metaphor in chapter 4.
Ooh, that's good. That was hold on to.
Oh my God. It was so bad, Sam. It was so bad. But the thing is, the good thing was that by then I totally had the bug. So by the time I'd got my, knee-jerk rejection from Mills and Boon and the report back from the RNA, I had already written another book because I was completely hooked. And I'd read a ton of Mills and Boons for research by then. I'd always read them for fun, but I started reading them for research. And so I'd written another book, and then I sent that one off, and that one was rejected. And then I wrote another one.
That's brilliant, because you're doing all the right things. You're reading the stuff, you're doing the work, you're keeping with it. Yeah.
And I joined a professional organization, which gave me a lot of feedback and a lot of networking. And got to know, talk to a lot of professionals in the field as well. So writers, authors, agents, got to know them. And sort of understood the market and the job a lot more. So I wasn't, a naive person thinking,
what is it? You learn the ropes, really.
Yeah. What is it the Dunning-Kruger effect? Or you think the less you know, the better you think you are? I totally had that, but worked really hard to get rid of that. And at that point in my life, I was teaching full time. Was I trying for a baby? I think I was trying for a baby. And I wrote so much faster than I do today. So I was writing 3 or 4 50,000 word manuscripts a year, sending them off. And by my fourth one, I got accepted by Mills and Boon. And at the same time, I'd written. Sorry?
It's a big thing. It's a big thing.
Oh, it was huge. It was huge. And at the same time, I had written a standalone romantic comedy, and I got an agent for that. At the same time, it was within a month. I got my first contract first for Mills and Boon, because you don't need an agent for them. And I got signed with an agent for my first standalone romantic comedy. So because
It all happened.
It all happened.
Yeah,
and then publication was delayed, and I kept on writing, and my agent was sending out stuff. So what ended up happening was, because I'd written so much, and some of those early manuscripts I was able to revise so that they were decent. In 2006, I had 5 books out with 2 different publishers, and a baby.
Oh my goodness. When it hits, it really hits.
Yeah. Since then, I have slowed down a lot.
No, it's astounding, really. But it just shows you how, when you put the work in, when you do the research, do the networking, take the thing seriously, but it will all happen. Like if you just keep at it and keep going.
Yeah. If I'd given up, and I remember when my second manuscript was rejected, I had a great time writing that book, and it eventually did get published. And I loved it, and I sent it, and I was like, they're going to take this one. I know they're going to take this one. And I remember I was in the US visiting my family, and back in the UK, a slim envelope came through the post. And in those days, you got your rejections or acceptances by the post, because you posted your manuscript. And if it was thick, it was an acceptance. And if it was thin, it was a rejection.
Yeah.
So I got a thin envelope through the post. And I remember, hearing that and just going, they've rejected me. What do they want? I can't do any better than this. This is the best I can do. And it's still not good enough. And I was really in a lot of despair. But, I was wrong. That wasn't the best I could do. That was just the best I could do then.
At that point, yeah. I think that's really, really, really valuable for people to hear, because it is a journey, isn't it? And it is learning the ropes. And you had multiple degrees at that point. You were teaching. You had all the right things going on, but it still took that. I suppose it's understanding how fiction works, isn't it? And all of those things to bring it all together. It's very exciting. So that's and then it just took off. One of the things I absolutely love about you, we were just talking about this before we came on, is, I suppose, and this is sort of from a professional point of view, is the creativity, the level of creativity, because each of your books are so different. So we've got a couple to show people now as we go along. I've literally just read Spirited, read at the start of lockdown, which is the one that's out at the moment, which is a historical book, and all that's Victorian ghost photography and all sorts of amazing things. But you've also, as Simon mentioned, Together right at the start, which is I'm going to get into the sort of the structure of them in a minute, and then Louis and Louise, which was another, all completely different, all massively ambitious projects, because Together's told backwards. Louis and Louise is the same character, but from their two different points of view. And then Spirited is historical, so that requires a massive amount of research. So they're just, when you come up with an idea, and obviously you move from Mills and Boon into all of these different things, but when you come up with an idea, are you ever daunted by, how do they end up being so, how are you so brave when you start? Is that even a question? I don't know. So amazing.
Is it brave or is it foolish? Every time, right? Especially after I wrote Together, I was like, right, my next book is just going to be so straightforward. Like, I just wrote this book backwards.
There we go. Yeah.
So Together is an epic love story told backwards. It covers 50 years of a couple's life, and it was a pain in the backside to plan, and even more of a pain in the backside to edit, because you have to edit it backwards, forwards, both ways at once, and so it's your mind. And after I wrote that, I thought, I'm going to write something really straightforward.
Really?
And then I decided to write an alternative reality sort of sliding doors novel about gender. So that didn't really happen.
Right. Let me see if I can find that one now. There we go. Which is this one, which was supposed to be the easy book.
Yeah, that was supposed to be easy. That was actually slightly easier because it was two storylines, and so I had to plan two storylines, but there are two storylines happening to the same people in two different times, and it's not just the protagonist who is the same person, one male and one female, but all the other characters are the same people as well. But they have changed. They have slight differences in their lives because of what's happened, just because of the protagonist being born male or being born female. That just creates echoes in everything that happens to them and to the entire community where they live. So, that turned out not to be so straightforward either.
I think for new writers who are interested in, because one of the things we've discovered as we've gone through this series, one of the things Andrew Miller said was that the debut novel has to be original and fresh, and it's approaching something from a different angle, or whatever the story is, to be original. It's so important. So I think for writers, apart from that, it might terrify the pants off them, but to get these 3 books and to read them and see what you've done in terms of structure is massively inspiring, because it just shows how you can take different stories. And I think the important thing is not to be afraid, isn't it? Take us back to, because I know you've got a plotting course, we're going to talk a bit more about that now, but take us back to your actual process. how I know, yeah, plotting, post-its. Talk to me about post-its.
Okay, this was, I really had to evolve because, as we said, I've written a lot of different types of books in my career. So I started out writing very straightforward, short romantic comedies, where the it was a linear plot with one or two protagonists. But as my books became more and more complicated, I realized that I just couldn't hold it in my head. So I can hold probably 45,000 words of plot in my head. Any more than that, it's too much. And linear plot, any more than that is too much. So I need ways of keeping track of it. And I never used to be a planner either when I was writing shorter books. But then when I start writing more complex and ambitious books, I really need to plan them before I begin, because I need to see, especially when you're playing with structure. I don't choose complicated structures because I want to do a complicated structure. The thing is, it has to serve the story. It has to be an intrinsic part of the storytelling, and so you need to plan the story to make use of that structure as much as possible, or plan the structure to give the story more impact. So, for example, with Together, because it's told backwards, you need to construct the story in such a way that the characters know spoilers, but they can't give them away to the reader.
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount of sort of dramatic irony going on. There's a huge amount of just juggling what you show and what you don't show in order to keep the reader interested. And it's very purposeful. Yeah. So when I'm writing a novel, when I wrote Together, for example, I decided that if I was going to tell a story backwards, you need a narrative thrust. But how do you create the narrative thrust when the reader actually already knows what happens?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, whoa.
So it becomes a sort of why done it instead of a who done it. So you have to have a question at the beginning, which is the big overarching question of the book. Why did he do it? In the first chapter of the book, Robbie and Emily, the protagonists, have been married happily for 50 years. And they're in their 80s. And in the chapter 1 of Together, Robbie, the husband, gets up, leaves his wife sleeping in bed, walks downstairs, feeds the dogs, leaves their house that he built for the two of them, walks across the street to the ocean, takes off his clothes, walks into the ocean and drowns himself. That's chapter 1 of the novel. And then it goes back. And so I set up a really strong why done it right at the beginning.
Yeah, we have to read that.
But one why done it doesn't take you through the whole book, right? You need to pace it to keep on bringing up questions over and over and over again. So I sort of split it into 5 time periods, and each time period had its own question to pose and answer.
Excellent.
And you didn't necessarily know the answer, even though you knew what happened after that. And sometimes the question was, oh, wait, hold on. I know this already, but now you're telling me this. Wait, how do those two facts go together? So sometimes it was, the end, but the characters don't. So you use that irony to keep it going. So I plotted out each of the 5 time periods with that question in mind. Yeah. And then each one of those 5 time periods has its own arc of things, question, up and downs, following that sort of framework. And then sort of put them together afterwards. And I did it on Post-it notes. I do everything on Post-it notes. I'm obsessed. I had my big whiteboard upstairs, and Post-its don't really stick to whiteboards very well, so I put it on the back. And then it took me a while to write the book, so then I had to sellotape the Post-it notes down because they weren't.
Very sensible. Somebody, I think it was John Grisham or somebody, plotted out an entire book by Post-it. Can't remember John Grisham or it might be Michael Cottingly, one of them we interviewed last week, and he came into the room the next morning and everything had fallen off.
Yeah. It's a top tip. Like if you know that this thing has to last a long time, take a picture of it. Yeah. And use some sellotape or blue tack as well.
So important.
Yeah. So I did it with colored, and then each section had its own colors. But then I had because telling a book backwards is and in 5 sections can be a little bit bitty. I didn't want it to seem fragmented, so I had certain themes or settings or types of events that kept on happening sort of in repetition. So I used repetition to pull it together, and so I also plotted those bits too. So every important event in Together, which you can probably even see from the cover, happens on or near water. So that was an important theme.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it really is. And how long did it take you to write it?
Once I had plotted it, it didn't take me that long to write because I knew what I was doing. It took me a long time to plot. I think it took me, a few months at least to, get a good working plot in there, and because it had to be in a fair amount of detail, probably more detail than I would do for maybe other books. I needed to really spend some time thrashing it out and working out those questions. What are the spoilers going to be? What's the and then also the protagonists they're the same people, but they're very different at each different point in the book because it covers 50 years, and you're not the same person, at 80 that you were at 20.
Yeah.
So working out those character changes as well.
Yeah. It's just incredible. As somebody who's a crime writer and tries to keep their window as narrow as possible, then like 5 days and 50 years is like, oh my God, mind blowing. I mean, I just think it's incredible. It's an amazing process. What, in terms of ideas, because these ideas are all so original, where do they come from? How do you form ideas? Did it just arrive and it was like, I need to tell this story, or how does that happen for you?
Yeah, I don't know. Don't you find that that's a really hard question almost always to answer?
Yeah, sometimes for me it can be an image that comes into my head that I need to explore, or it can be 2 really interesting things that I find out and I'm like, and then that starts an idea. It's just, I don't even know. But yours, because they're also different. Spirited, again, that's about a Victorian, this fantastic Victorian lady and her photography, and there we go, perfect. And also, guys, I'm going to put this in the stream so you get the link to there we go. It's a beautiful hardback. It is. I love hardbacks, and it is just one of those books you just want to cherish because it's just a lovely, solid thing. But an amazing story that literally does. It's captured by circumstance, haunted by grief, freed by love. It's just a lovely tag. That's exactly what it is. Where did that come? How did you start off with that idea? Which part of that story came to you first?
So Spirited is weird, when I talk about writing, I talk a lot about failing. I think that a huge amount of writing is failing, and then learning how to do things better because you failed, and coping with failure, and trying to be resilient. And I've written over 25 books now, published novels, and I think I think with each novel you have to to a certain extent reinvent yourself. It's one thing to have a debut that really grabs things, but when you've written 25 books, people are like, I don't know. I guess you have to be a brand name, or you have to reinvent yourself. I'm not really a brand name, so I feel that I do need to reinvent things every time I write, and it also keeps I hope it keeps my writing fresh, and it keeps me interested.
Keeps you interested,
yeah, because I'm, I need to be interested by stuff. So the reason where Spirited came from was because I had my postgraduate degree is in children's literature, fairies in Victorian children's literature. Which has zero practical applications whatsoever, like none. Okay, there's nothing you can do with a degree in fairies. But one of the sort of case study that kicked off that whole novel was the case of the Cottingly fairy photographs, which actually happened in the 1920s up in Leeds. And I was very interested in those as they, not just because they were fraudulent, which they were, but because the way that they were reported and treated by the media and by Arthur Conan Doyle, who made them so popular, was a really interesting intersection of the notions of childhood and fantasy and desire. Yeah. So that was sort of my premise. And so I felt that these supernatural photographs are very interesting, not just because when you look at them, you go, wow. And ghost photographs as well. They show us so much about what we're feeling and what we want life to be. And I think ghost photographs are very interesting because they hold grief and love and hope and all of these really profound human emotions. So I wanted to write a story about that. But because usually I write contemporary novels, I thought probably that would never happen. And writing novels about ghost photographs is, you couldn't, I think it would be hard to write a convincing novel about real ghost photographs in contemporary times because it's so easy to fake them. But in Victorian times, people, they were fake. They're so obviously fake when you look at them now. But people were more inclined to believe them because they didn't understand how you could fake photographs. All that technology was invisible to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, nobody knew. So it had to be a historical. Anyway, sorry, this is turning into a really long story.
It's really interesting though. It's fascinating to get into, we're getting into your thought process.
So anyway, I knew it had to be historical, and also it's a lesbian love story, and I also wanted the historical forbidden element of that sort of love between two women, and also the invisible aspect of love between two women, romantic love between two women in Victorian times, where two women who were together all the time were just seen as very good friends. So, and the whole nature of female sexual desire in Victorian times is really pretty invisible as well.
Yeah,
problematic.
Yeah.
So I had this idea, but I was thinking I'll never write it. But what happened was, going back to Together. So what happened was when I wrote Together, it's a backwards love story, and it has a twist at the end. And everything, all that plotting and planning that I told you about was leading towards that twist. It was all based around what happens at the end of the novel, the big why that's posed in chapter 1, and everything was around that, and huge amounts of work. I wrote that book and submitted it to my then publisher, and they said, "Love the book, Julie. I think you need to change the ending." The big plot twist
that you spent 6 months getting towards and plotting out, and
they said, "We think you need to change the ending." I said, "No, I don't." And they said, "No, we think you do, because if you don't change the ending is too shocking, subversive to a love story. It's too readers won't like it. If you don't change the ending, I don't think any supermarkets will take this book." They said, "We can't submit it for Richard and Judy. It won't get reviewed. You'll just get negative reviews because the ending is so shocking. And we think that in order to, keep your career going, you should change the ending of this book."
Ooh.
So this was I can't remember when that was, 2017, I guess. So so I thought about it. It was really very, very difficult. This was sort of the opposite of the dilemma that I talked about earlier, when I didn't know what I was doing, so I thought I was great.
Yeah.
This was my 16th novel, and I knew what I was doing. I really felt that, and I had planned it and worked on it so hard, and I really felt that the ending was correct. That was what I personally wanted to say.
And for your characters, and you are the artist at the end of the day. That's your story.
It was right for my characters. It was right for me. But I also thought, I know this genre really well. And I also thought that it was appropriate for the genre that I was writing in. I thought it was okay. I thought I couldn't work out a way of changing it which wouldn't make the story worse. So with my agent's wholehearted approval and backing, we pulled the novel, and I paid back my advance, which was my salary for the year, and we found another publisher for it. But while that was happening, it took a long time to decide to pull the novel, and it took a long time to get a new publisher for it. There was a big delay, so that was when I decided, that Victorian sapphic ghost story I want to write, I'm just going to write that and reinvent myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing. And I think it's funny because one of the reasons I read it, I think, was right at the start of lockdown, and I found it really hard to concentrate, and I think everybody did. And I found there was huge comfort in historical fiction
Yeah.
because we know what happens at the end. And it sounds a bit like you were going through that because that's a traumatic thing to pull a book, to pay back, to not have a publisher, to be out of contract, all of those things at that
Yeah.
point is pretty traumatic. And it feels like that there's a comfort in writing something where we know, okay, you're still telling the story, but you're within the parameters of something where we know what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A distance. All these people are dead now. It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's okay. So it's a safe space, nearly. Yeah, no, and actually that's what comes across when you read the book, because it's so beautifully written, and it's and you've managed to get all of those things in there. And also, I think one of the themes, or some of the things that come through from your book, all your books, are relationships and secrets.
Yeah.
And that's really what they come down. So you've managed to, although we're talking about brand and how difficult it is when you do reinvent yourself with every single book, because really you're finding new readers every time, aren't you? You're looking for
I
new.
hope so.
Yeah, exactly. But that is a continuous theme through all of them, right from the very beginning, I'd say, right from the as well. And so that's wonderful, and that's something that I think, from a reader's perspective, is that we know we can trust a Julie Cohen, that we're going to get relationships, we're going to get secrets, we're going to get a really well told story. So it's wonderful to hear actually how that came, because you would have been very easy for you just to have stopped writing at that point.
I considered it. Yeah. I checked. I was very lucky that I had a profession to fall back on. Do you know what I mean? I think if I'd been younger when I was first published, if I'd just gone straight from university to being a full-time author, I would have had a lot less resilience in those months where I thought that my career was over. And even if I could keep on publishing, I was like, or if I was going to self-publish, which would be a good career choice, still there was a huge risk. And at least it gave me a huge amount of comfort to know that, well, I can go back to teaching, and it will be okay. I'll be able to support myself, and then I can write.
So that's such an enormously huge thing. And then when Together came out, it was enormously successful, wasn't it? I mean, people did get it, and the end was fine. So you were.
But I got a publisher who really understood what I was trying to do, really understood it, and got it, and made it a feature, made the ending a feature of their publishing.
Yeah, which is wonderful. It's wonderful to have that support, isn't it? Really. Just yes.
Also, to have an agent who is 100% behind you, I wouldn't have got through that without my agent, Teresa Chris, who was just fierce. And she was fierce in defending the novel, but she was also fierce when I said, listen, Teresa, I need some time to think about this. And she said, okay. She stepped off. She didn't pressure me. She rang me every week to make sure I was okay. But every time she said, I'm not going to ask you what you've decided. I just want to make sure you're okay. I'm like, I'm all right.
It shows how important that author agent relationship is, doesn't it? I think that if you do want to go in a different direction, or you want to do something different, that you've got somebody who's professional, who understands the business, and you can discuss it with and bounce off, and that's wonderful to hear. I think every author agent relationship should be like that, shouldn't it? Really, because
and I trusted her because she didn't, because she doesn't BS me, right? She's told me a lot when I've been wrong.
That's what you need too. Yes.
Right? She tells me I'm wrong all the time. So, when she tells me I'm right, I really believe her.
That's fantastic. It's great to hear. And it's it's a testament to both your relationships and your skill that you're able to deliver it and stick by your art. I think that's really, stay true to the story. It's just fascinating. So in terms of actually your writing day, because I know people are going to be asking about that, what do you, because obviously you're a full-time writer now, what do you do? Do you have a word count? Do you write in the mornings? How does your day work out?
So my son is 14. So I write, usually what happens is I get him off to school, I take the dog for a run or a walk, and that's really good plotting time or research time, listening to podcasts or audiobooks. And then I come back and drink huge amounts of tea And I have I have an office up in the attic of our house, which doesn't have good internet reception.
It's very good.
So again, I have a computer there, which is not connected to the internet. And so I write on that.
Yeah.
I try to do about 1,000 words a day when I'm writing actively. And I sometimes I can write more, and sometimes that is a stretch. Sometimes it's really hard. I write much more slowly at the beginning of a novel than at the end.
That's interesting.
Yeah. At first, I can get 800 a day if I'm lucky. I'm just starting a novel now, and it's squeezing them out, because you're making a choice with every word you write.
Yeah. But even with your plotting, so when you've got your post-its and you've got your plotting worked out, you know where you're going.
Yeah.
Do you write a treatment or anything off based on that, or do you just literally go from the coloured notes on the wall?
Sometimes I do. Yeah. Sometimes I do write like just 500 words of a sort of summary, not even including the ending. Sometimes just so so I know where I'm really. Part of my planning and part of my processing process is really, really knowing what I want the reader to get out of my novel. I think my training in Mills and Boon, writing for Mills and Boon, has really made me very reader focused.
Yeah.
So I always think, what is the reader going to look for in this book, and I try to define that for myself.
That's really, I think, so important. That's really, really, really useful for the guys who are tuning in, because you have to write for yourself, but you do have to have one eye on your reader. Yeah.
What sort of experience I want them to have. And actually, thank you so much for saying that about relationships and secrets, because I think that is my brand. And when I try to write something that's not about that, I struggle. So, but I want the reader to have this experience, and then I think about the theme or what the message of the book is, and I try to think about that a lot before I start, because that helps me make my decisions.
Yeah.
And my messages are, they're not hugely profound. It's this is like love transcends death, right? it's not
important. Yeah.
And this one is what keeps a couple together. What is love? What this couple have everything against them. How do they manage to have a good life anyway? And this one is how does gender change your life? So I always have a thing, and I write it down someplace big, like usually on a Post-it on my computer, or sometimes I write it on a piece of paper on my wall, so that keeps me focused with all those choices that I make.
I'm going to do that. That's really interesting. Sorry,
I learned that from Kate Harrison, who is a really, really good writer and a really good writing teacher as well. And she taught me to think through those big sort of meta questions before I even start. What am I trying to say?
Just to get your head in line and everything just working. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. No, it's brilliant. Really, really good. And then in terms of character, because your characters jump off the page in every book, they are so real. Do you spend a lot of time working on them and before, because obviously you've got your plot and stuff worked out, but then the character's like a different part of that process? I mean, or do they appear in your head, or how does that happen?
I think the character comes before the plot. What comes first is the idea. So the sort of big concept idea. So, ghost photography, gender, sliding doors, love story told backwards. That comes first. And then I try to work out what kind of people would be involved in that process. And then once I've figured out what the people are, then the plot comes after that.
Okay.
And sometimes I do a lot of thinking about the characters. And sometimes the characters just appear. So, sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not. And what really very often happens is the first page of the book just appears with a character's voice before I even start plotting sometimes, because that is how they manifest in my head. So sometimes I have to write the first page of the book before I can do any planning at all.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I can understand that. Sometimes that happens to me, where you get like the first line, or you get the start of the first scene, and then you've got to find out how they got there.
Yeah.
And then, so would you do a lot of research, because there's a lovely in Spirited, there's a whole it's not exactly a subplot, sort of a subplot with India and the whole the British Raj and everything going on there as well. I mean, and those characters are wonderful. And there is a twist at the end of Spirited too, which I just adored. I think I cried at the end as well.
I love that.
Gordon's book. So do you have to do a lot of research into those types of characters? So, but they're not even minor characters, because they're major characters in the book at the same time. But how was there a lot of research involved in those people, or did they just arrive?
There was a lot of research. The character in India, Pavan, I didn't need much research before I came up with them. They arrived fully formed. They're my favorite character in the book. Pavan and Henriette are my two favorite characters. I just adore Pavan. But I did have to do a lot of research about the Indian Mutiny and Indian Rebellion. I did have to do a lot of research about Delhi in that period, the siege of Delhi and what happened. So I had to do a lot of research around that, and also, what somebody in Pavan's class and religion and caste and gender how they would behave in that time. So I did do a lot of research around that. And I had to do a lot of research just to write that thread of the book, which I enjoyed a lot. That was really fantastic.
You could feel the difference in temperature between the Indian bits and the British bits. Like when I'm thinking back to the book, it's nearly like, the smells you really, you're a beautiful writer, because you absolutely evoke the period. You feel the damp in England, and you feel the heat in India, and that jumps off the page in the same way the characters do too. And I think they sort of carry it, because it's seen obviously through the eyes of the characters. And that's a real skill, I think, getting people, and they're also different. That's the other thing you manage to do, is have everybody in every book, the characters are so different. Joseph O'Connor talks about, I'm always quoting this, but how characters sort of float around in ether above your head, and then they look for writers to land on with their stories. And that's what it feels like, because they're all so different with you, that you manage to mine the most amazing people.
Oh, thank you. I do spend a lot of time thinking about motivations and problems and conflicts and the way that they think, their sort of worldviews. I've just started planning a new novel, which I should start writing next month. And I'm in the process of doing that right now. So I have 4 characters. I think I'm going to have 4 point of view characters. And I'm trying to work out, their individual backgrounds, their individual ways of seeing the world and things like that. And trying to make them different from me.
Yeah. Well, they are. That's what's wonderful. It's really, it's just proper writing, isn't it? It's like, it's proper storytelling, where you're literally taken away into a completely different world.
That's the idea.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I think I might bring Simon in there, because he's going to tackle some of these questions, which I think we've got some come through. And give me 1 second. I got Spirited on. I'll just make sure I have to do all the bits. Here he comes. I'm going to get Spirited up on the screen too, so people can see that again. There we go. Now that's nice. So nice and quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's less direct questions, and more people just go being really inspired by your story. And I think that's and I had to say, I hadn't realized you'd written 25 books. I mean, I feel exhausted at the thought of that. But one point that's come up is when you've created this incredible set of characters and plot, and then you move on to the next book, do you have to kind of purge yourself of the previous book? Does it hang around? You talked about ghosts. Does it hang around in your office in the attic?
Do you know what is so unfair? What I find the hardest thing for moving from one book to the next, and I'm sure you find this as well, Sam, is that when you finished a book, it is a thing, and it is a polished thing, and you have solved the problems, and you have worked your way through it, and you've made all the decisions, and there it is a thing. And when you start writing the next book, it is not a thing. It is what is it? It's a mess, and it's you don't know. It's just like this thing sort of floating around that you have to capture somehow, and you don't know if you can do it. And that's what I have trouble with. It's not necessarily saying goodbye to the characters, because I've finished with them. That's okay. They're done. It's saying goodbye to having accomplished something and having to do it all over again.
Neat. Yeah.
My dog's trying to get in now, so I'm just going to open the door.
Hello to everybody.
She will come up and say hello. Yeah.
Good.
No, it's really interesting. I realized the other day that when I write, I actually don't put the end on anything. Oh look, fluffy, very fluffy.
Well, I think in 25 hours of interviews, that's the first time we've actually had a dog. But
barking now. But I think it's I realise that I don't write the end on things, because I think I don't feel that the world is finished, that the characters somehow continue, even though I've left them and their story, that part of their story is finished, that somehow they continue on. And have you ever thought about picking up on any of the characters about? And
you read my mind. Yeah.
My readers ask me to, and I don't. I had sort of earlier in my career, when I was writing romantic comedies for a headline, I would have recurring characters turn up in different, and I had books carry on. Actually, I had a character turn up in one of my novels for a different publisher as well, but I haven't done that for a long time. I enjoyed that, and my readers enjoyed it because there were little Easter eggs to find. But I haven't done that for a while.
I haven't done it for that's good. And tell us a little bit about the next book. Is this completely different again? Still a mess. You probably aren't allowed to tell us anything, really.
Well, is it different? Yeah, I think it's different. It's about marriage and affairs and love. It's set in Maine, on a Maine island. It is, it's about, it's got some queerness in there, and I think it probably goes back to, these two books are both set in Maine, and this one in particular had a lot to do with class, and the sort of Maine landscape, and I'm going back to that, writing on an island in Maine, which is, mostly serves summer people. Which has a very small year-round population, and a very large summer population, and the sort of clashes that happen because of that, seen through the eyes of two married couples. But
that's interesting. We start. That's like, ooh, I love that idea of the complements of story, and you can feel the new people coming in and changing the dynamic. And that's interesting.
Can I
go on?
Can I just ask? Do you how often do you go back to Maine? Obviously not
recently.
Usually twice a year.
You haven't been there this year.
I haven't been there since I haven't been there since last Christmas.
Has that kind of, do you think that's dictated the fact that you're trying to vicariously travel back by writing the next book in Maine, or is that just a coincidence?
Maybe. My editor also asked for it, so I think she was like, "I love your books about Maine. Write one about Maine." I think I write pretty well when there's a certain amount of yearning involved.
Yeah. And do you does your personality change while you're writing different kinds of books? Because we've talked about this a number of times. I think we talked about this with Philip Arder, who I think is actually tuned in today, various other people. And I talked about actors. I know a lot of actors, and when they're playing like a really dark character, they're a nightmare to live with. And I just sort of wondered, what does your teenage boy prefer you writing? Historical, contemporary? What makes you a better mum?
Yeah, I don't think I'm a particularly good mum when I'm writing anyway. It doesn't matter what I'm writing. I think it's hard. It's hard to be a parent and a writer at the same time. They have completely conflicting needs.
That's the same with this house too.
Yeah.
So when you come down the stairs from the attic, and I love that idea of no connection to the outside world. Is it like you've left a kind of pot bubbling away on low heat on the stove, and then you go out the next day, and sometimes it's boiled over, and sometimes it's just right? I mean,
that's the idea. That's the idea. If it's working, that's what happens. Something will have happened while I've been gone. But in reality, sometimes you come down and you're fighting fire downstairs, so you forget everything until the next day, and then you go back up and go, I've just I've forgotten it all. I mean, I am of a certain age, so I just forget everything anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I have my phone with me constantly because I have to leave voice messages for myself about my book all the time, or else I'll forget, any ideas that I have.
Pop up. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you kind of get a draft down and then go back and rework before Teresa or your editor sees it?
Yes. Yeah. I never let anybody see my first drafts at all. Earlier in my career, I had several critique partners that I used to talk things through with, but I don't anymore. I'm a great belief in the crappy first draft. It's just sort of is just me getting the story down, and then I go back and rework it.
Yeah, I think of on all the interviews we've done over this year, I think that's come out a lot. That notion of just getting a draft down, and I know a lot of people do the NaNoWriMo thing, where you just write a novel in a month. But it's, I suppose it's like an artist just doing a quick pencil sketch, isn't it? It's just for you.
Yeah. And the first draft is really discovery. It's for you, and then the second draft is for the reader. When you start thinking about that.
Yeah, no, it's really.
Another question: Do you read reviews?
Yes.
Oh God!
Do you read reviews now of a book that was published a few years ago, and in a good way or a bad way, or?
Oh, probably not. I usually read a review. I only read reviews of the books that are out now, so that I can sort of work out whether it's being marketed the right way. I guess that helps. And helps me talk to my editor about things. Okay. I always tell everybody not to read reviews, and then I get weak, and I do. So, and I mean, I certainly read. I try not to read Amazon reviews and try not to read Goodreads reviews, not because I don't appreciate the readers who take their time to write those reviews, because I really, really do. But I also know that those reviews are not for me. They're not for me. Yeah. If a blogger will review my book, as part of a blog tour, or a review in a newspaper or a magazine, I always read those. So because those are less personal, and I feel that I can gain something from them. But I do read the reviews. I try not to. It's a temptation to hell. Sometimes I don't want to know.
I know. Yeah. No, it is.
So it sounds to me, again, picking up on another theme. We've had this. Writing isn't necessarily a lonely business, isn't it? You're out there on your own. But it seems like you've got a lot of succor from being part of communities like the RNA, even Milk Boom, when you were unpublished by them, you were still part of, getting a reader's report. Any advice for people out there who are on this sort of, they're these lonely people at the beginning, where should they find their communities? Where would you look if you were starting?
Yeah, I definitely found it in the RNA. I found it in online writing communities. Message boards, talking to writers, and I think only a writer can understand what writers need, and what we go through. I love talking with readers, but they have a completely different understanding of the experience. And I think you need to I think maybe sometimes you need to change communities, look around. I've joined a local writers group, for example, when I first started off, and they were great support for me because we met in real life twice a month. But I think you need to make sure that you really trust these people, and that they have your best interests in mind, and that you have their best interests in mind. I think there's a lot of trust going on, and I don't think there's any shame in leaving a writers group if it is not working for you. Then again, if you're leaving every single writers group in a huff,
probably that might be a sign.
Yours.
But I think that support. You're so right there, because there's the process, understanding the process. I think only another writer can understand, because it's some bits that are so bizarre. Characters arriving, images arriving in your head, developing them. And it's only somebody who's in tune with that can understand that mystical process, I suppose. And having that support so important. That's why the RNA are so amazing, aren't they? They're a wonderful network. They're so welcoming. I go to lots of nearly all the awards in the last few years, and they're just wonderful. And it's so lovely to see everybody, and they connect so well, and it's just great. So it's a really, really good organisation to join. And as you mentioned, they do that critique as well, don't they? So if anybody is writing anything, romantic, and that includes all the different genres, because there's many genres of romance.
Yes, I really wish that we could change the name of the RNA from Romantic Novelist Association to Relationship Fiction Association, which encompasses everything. It is a very, very broad church. It doesn't need to be a romance novel or even a romantic novel. It just needs to be a novel about relationships.
I went to an awards lunch at the RNA 25 years ago, and one of the conversations was being had was maybe they should change the name. So I
an ongoing issue.
Yeah. So one of the things I mentioned earlier on, that you had a bit of a gift to give everybody.
Yes.
And, maybe at this point I should just put my hat on.
Absolutely.
As Santa, I'd like to hand over to you because you have a little gift to offer everybody here.
Oh, thank you. I'll send the link to Sam after this is finished, so she can pop it into the comments and into the video. But I have an online course on Teachable on using Post-its to transform your writing. And in that I talk in a lot more detail about how I've used Post-its to plot my novels and to revise my novels, to brainstorm my novels, sort of every step of the writing process. And it's about a 2-hour course, incredibly practical, with exercises and examples that you can use. And I will offer 25% off to anyone. To anyone who wants to take this course. I'll send you a 25% off discount, both on the full price and the concessions price, that you can use to sign up to the course before the end of January. But then once you sign up, you have 90 days access to the course.
It's fantastic.
Wow, that's great.
I think a lot of people are very keen to do that, not least me. It sounds fantastic. Really, really brilliant. Yeah.
It's really fun. It's a fun course. I try to make it really fun because, we're all stuck at home. You might as well enjoy it.
Definitely.
And how has lockdown affected your writing in any way, good or bad?
Bad. I'm homeschooling.
Okay.
And it's been hard, I think. And without any social interaction, you get in your own head. I've wrote a novel which I've had to trash. So I think it's but that's fine. That's what happens. It's hard to write. Now, I think one of the things I've learned in a 25 book career is that you have to forgive yourself, and that you got to make mistakes. So. It's been really hard. I admire people who keep on writing, publishing, just getting on with it during times like this.
I'm sure that book that you said you had to trash, I'm sure it's not wasted time or words, and a ghost of that will come back again, won't it?
Writing is never, ever wasted. Never. Even if, the only thing that you get out of it is that you got up every day and you put words on paper. That is still a good and useful thing to do.
Yeah, and a success. I think that's it. That's one thing. When we were talking to Rachel Donahue the other week, for her, finishing the book is a success.
Yeah,
that's as much. And I think you're so right there. That actually, getting down and putting words on paper is.
I think getting out of bed's a success at the moment.
It certainly is. Yeah. No, lockdown's been tough. I think that the thing, often when people say that they're giving up work to go and write, I always worry about that, because that interaction between people is so important. And I think in lockdown, that's what we're missing so much, is that connection. And that makes it hard to write, I think. Yeah. So it becomes like a pressure cooker, doesn't it? Very bizarre.
Yeah. I used to write a lot more when I had a full-time job.
Yeah.
And I do think that one stimulates the other.
Yeah, hugely. But then also there's that thing about, when you're really busy in a type of time, although you must have been hugely with homeschooling as well, then you tend to get more done. But then being creative when there's any level of anxiety anywhere is just, I think it's just nearly impossible. That definitely struck me right at the start. Well, hopefully with the vaccine on the way, we're coming out of this, definitely, fingers crossed.
What a reunion it's going to be, 2020.
Oh, fantastic. Dear me. Anyway, so thank you.
Julie, I know you've got to run off, but we just wanted to say it's been an amazing hour, and I can just see from the comments, thanks as ever for generosity of your time, spirit, and all of that. And thank you for introducing us to your dog, which was obviously,
she's still here.
What's her
Merry
name?
Christmas to her,
Meg.
Di. Gorgeous.
Oh, Meg.
No, look at this.
Yeah, you're going real. Oh, look, it's even waving.
Oh, thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much, and happy Christmas.
Absolutely.
Happy Christmas. Thank you for
Thank
having
you
me. I've
too.
really, really
Pleasure.
enjoyed
Oh,
myself.
it's fantastic. So I'll put the link to your course in the comments. Spirited is in the shops now. The link to that is also in the comments, guys. Do pick it up. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous read. It'll take you away from all of everything that's going on in 2020 and hopefully the start of 2021. So thank you very much indeed, Julie Cohen. Thank you very much, Mr. Trewin, for a year's worth nearly of
I was just going to say before we finish,
Friday.
I just turn up and sit here, and it's an absolute joy. But I think I just wanted to say publicly to you, Sam, you are the engine that drives this whole thing, and without you, it just wouldn't happen.
Oh, you're very good.
So you've been a big inspiration to, I know, a lot of people this year. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think a round of applause for everybody all round, and Christmas tree in the background there. Thank you so much. So we'll be signing off, and we'll see everybody from Santa Claus and Julie Cohen and Spirited and Meg. We'll be signing off, and we'll see you all in 2021.
Okay. Happy Christmas.
Bye. Happy Christmas.